Hello and welcome to another episode of BioTalk. Once again, I'm Chelsea Zimmerman, and with me today is Rebecca Taylor. It's been a while since we got together last time, and we're going to be talking about something we really haven't discussed before, and we're going to jump off of this story that came out recently about 23andMe selling data for drug search. That's the title of it. 23andMe is a consumer genetic testing startup and has a large database of DNA. It's now, according to just the headline here, it's sifting through it for clues to new drugs. What exactly are they doing here?
Well, 23andMe, 23andMe is what you call a direct-to-consumer genetics company. So it's a DTC, is what they call it. And basically, what you do is you spit in a vial, a little glass vial, and you send it to them, and they test it for whatever stuff they want to test for, or whatever you order, and those vary from, simple ancestry stuff to genetic predispositions to a certain disease. They got in trouble for that because they're really not FDA approved to do that. Because the reality is that we can test for certain genes, but often we don't know what the clinical significance is on those. So the problem is that they can tell you that this, particular gene variant that you have gives you a predisposition to this or this or this, but the reality is we may not know enough about that to actually definitively be able to make that kind of claim. And so the FDA came down hard on 23andMe. They were allowed to, I think, they were told to stop altogether, especially on the health stuff. And then I think they're able to return, limited to some testing. But the thing is that what 23andMe is doing is that you're paying them to collect information on you. So, and they're selling that information. So it's very much like Facebook, right? You're freely giving Facebook a ton of mineable data about you and your preferences and your friends and everything else. And they're turning around and monetizing that in all different kinds of ways, selling ads and things like that. Well, this is a little bit similar, except you're actually paying for the privilege of doing that. And so I have a feeling Ancestry.com is a lot of the same, where you probably have seen those ads all over the place.
I can't turn on the TV without seeing those ads.
And knowing what I know about genetics, I mean, I'm not an expert in ancestry genetics. That is absolutely not my field. But I'm wondering where the pie chart comes from, because I'm not really sure how well you can, from someone's DNA, figure out that they're 23% Native American or whatever, or 15%, Eastern European. I'd like to see the algorithm on that. That's all I gotta say. I'd like to see how they calculate that. But the thing that I think people need to be really cognizant of is that, and a lot of people don't realize this, that once your tissues or your blood or your DNA leaves your body, you have zero control over what happens to that. And so my personal, this is just my opinion and my personal kind of philosophy on this is I don't offer any sample, urine, anything, blood, tissue, unless there's a compelling reason to do so. So I do not, volunteer for drug testing or anything like that, for whatever reason. Because you really don't have any control over that. And that's actually bitten some people pretty badly, actually, over the years. This idea that we have this innate sense that we have bodily autonomy. Yes. I mean, that is an inherent feeling that we have. Okay.
Definitely in this day and age for everything.
Yeah, definitely in this day and age. And we feel that extends to our bodily tissue after it leaves our body, but legally it doesn't. And so, for example, the people watching this may be familiar with Henrietta Lacks and the Gila cell line. Henrietta Lacks was a African American woman in the South who died of a particularly virulent cervical cancer. And it was biopsied and a sample was taken, and without her knowledge or her family's knowledge or consent, that cell line, because it was so robust and it just keeps growing and dividing and growing and dividing, it was called the Gila cell line for her name. Henrietta Lacks, the first initials of her first two letters of her first and last name. And basically the Gila cell line is now all over the world. Its DNA has been sequenced, and then also the sequence was put online without the consent of the Lacks family. So imagine the invasion of privacy there. I mean, literally Henrietta's entire genome was placed online without anyone giving consent to that. So millions, maybe even billions of dollars have been made on this cell line, and the Lacks family still lives in poverty. And they keep and they really don't have any understanding of what's going on. They keep thinking that the doctors and everyone keep contacting them about this because they think they're also going to get the same cancer. So they literally have very little understanding of what went on, and it's very clear that they were not treated ethically. I think that also happened to a man named Larry Moore. He had cancer, and the doctor who was treating him realized that he had a particularly interesting cancer and started a cell line called the Mo cell line, and kept asking for more samples. And, Larry Moore was thinking that this was necessary for his treatment.
Right.
What was really going on was that the doctors were realizing they could monetize and sell this cell line. And it was kind of unfortunate. Larry Moore sued, and the Supreme Court of California basically told him that he had no rights. He was not entitled to any of the
profits, right,
off of this because, again, once those tissues leave your body, you have zero control over what happens to them, and you have no right.
I mean, I guess ideally they believe you gave them up voluntarily.
But I think a lot of us,
not knowing exactly what that meant.
What that means is that someone else can make money off of your biological material, even if you don't give consent, explicit consent for that.
Right.
And so I'm not saying that, 23andMe and Ancestry.com and all these researchers are evil or that they, want to steal your parts and sell them for money. That isn't what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, as consumers and as parents and as, savvy citizens, we need to be cognizant of the fact that this kind of stuff does go on. And
not just be so casual about it. Because that's what concerns me. It's like all these commercials for Ancestry.com it's just pure curiosity. You're giving your DNA up for just to find out, not to say that finding out where you came from is not important. I mean, we talk about that a lot, especially with, third-party reproduction and stuff. That's important. And
that's a compelling reason,
But if you're just, and I've had actually, talked to people in the past month who just pure curiosity. They don't have, they're not missing parents. They're not, trying to find people. They're just, I just want to know what's in my DNA. I want to know what my body can tell me, where I came from and, all that kind of stuff. And, I mean, if you don't really need to know something, or if there's, don't be so casual about it. I mean,
No.
Unfortunately, in the case of the 2 cases you gave, that wasn't a casual
No.
giving of it.
No, and they did not give informed consent for that. And I think we're better about that now. That was in the 60s, and it's the same thing with those fetal stem cell lines. The women that, quote, gave informed consent for that,
And there is a question about whether,
did they know what was going to happen? Do we really understand? I mean, when we're giving
are they given all the information?
All the information. The other area that a lot of parents don't realize is that, the heel sticks, the newborn heel sticks that are required in many states to do genetics on newborns. It's very important genetics. There are a lot of genetic disorders when, detected at birth can really save lives and prevent, further damage and things like that. Really important kind of screening and genetic testing. The problem is that depending on where you live, states can keep those samples indefinitely and continue to test them for other things outside the scope of the original testing.
Okay.
And most parents don't know that. And if you do know that, if you opt out of the testing, that means that you don't get the benefit of the important genetics that have really done a great service for, public health. So I feel like, and there are a lot of genetics watch groups that feel like that should be an opt-in situation. So as a parent, I should be able to be confident that that heel stick card is the sample is going to be destroyed after the scope of the initial testing is done. And then I can opt in, for example, to any other testing. You know what I'm saying? If I, for research purposes, whatever, I can say, yeah, go ahead, use this for other things. I know in my state, they keep the cards for 21 years. In some states, they keep them indefinitely. And basically, the states are creating a giant DNA database of the citizens of their state, which is very, disconcerting. Am I saying don't get the testing done? No, I'm just saying that these are things that we're not aware of. I think that as parents and Catholics, we really need to be aware of, because there is this push, I think, to monetize the human body. And I think as Catholics, it's very clear that we are against that, patenting of naturally occurring genes, things like that. We cannot claim ownership of what is God's, and I think that's, for example, patenting embryos, and embryos and things like that. There's this real push to, and as we saw with the scandal with Planned Parenthood and the Center for Medical Progress videos, there's money to be made on harvestable biological material.
That's exactly what they're finding. And it's not just Planned Parenthood, which we talked about, is bigger than Planned Parenthood.
It's way bigger than Planned Parenthood. Yeah,
it's what the select panel on infant lives. This led to a whole congressional investigation just into the relationship between Planned Parenthood, or not just Planned Parenthood, but abortion clinics and what they call fetal procurement agencies. And that's what they're finding, is that it's created this market for unborn human lives, and they're profiting from it, which actually is illegal. The research, unfortunately, is not illegal. The profiting from it is illegal, but they're finding ways around it, or just outright skirting the law,
Exactly.
And
so, I kind of, there are cases too, where I'm not saying, never get involved in a research study or anything like that. I mean, if you have a devastating genetic disorder that runs in your family, or, there's something specific that researchers want to know, that is, a compelling reason. As long as the scope of the testing, I think, is very clear what their aims are, right? whether or not your sample, how long your samples are going to be kept, if they're going to be used for further testing, things like that. Yeah.
Those kind of things didn't. Now, do you say, do we have control over that? Can we,
No.
like, when you don't, but those are just questions you need to ask.
Yeah, I think that's questions you need to ask.
And then decide.
If that's something that you want. I just wouldn't, I see this on Facebook a lot. I have friends who are like, ooh, there's this new genetics company and go ahead and sign up and for $500 they'll tell you this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm not really sure I would do that. I don't know who these people are, what their plans are. Like, if you haven't asked those questions, what are you going to do with the samples after you're done? Are you going to sell them to someone else? Are they, and I'm sure everything's anonymized. In other words, like, usually names and birth dates are removed from that. But again, they have to keep some identifying marks on the sample, otherwise it's worthless. And so, I just wouldn't be willy-nilly handing over my spit or hair or, cheek swabs, urine, whatever, blood samples.
I've been a Law and Order SVU junkie, and that's late in the last year or so, and of course they're doing that all the time, because it's all. I mean, of course, and I think that's actually becoming another issue with just investigations in the police force,
right?
Doing DNA sampling, because they're trying to do more, getting DNA as proof, more and more but that's another instance where your DNA goes in the system once you do that, whether you're guilty or not.
It goes in the system. Yeah.
And that's becoming an issue.
Exactly.
With this whole
and
thing.
So, privacy is a big deal. I mean, and then again, to correlate though, at the same time, if you're a third-party gamete donor, so if you're a sperm donor or an egg donor, and you think you're going to remain anonymous, that is not going to happen. Yeah. So, from this point forward, I think, there is really no such thing as an anonymous gamete donor, because, and in some ways that's a good thing for those people who really do want to know where they came from, who their parents, what their parentage is. That's a compelling reason. And
it's
to find siblings
for many things, to find siblings, just to know your own, what kind of diseases and things you might get.
So medical history, absolutely. If I were in that situation, I think, I would seriously consider it. But again, I don't have that, issue. So, unless there is some, compelling reason. And for me, doing the annual blood test at the doctor's office is compelling reason. So I go ahead and do that, and I trust that,
if you have a UTI, you give your urine.
Your urine. Yeah, those are things. But, again,
do that.
I don't recommend. So, my daughter said there was a program at school. If she voluntarily took a drug test, she could be part of this group. And I was like, I don't think so. I used to do drug testing. Not that I think that you're going to test positive, but I just would never do that. And that's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that all these, drug programs are bad or faulty. I just said, no, honey, I just think that, handing over your urine to someone, and who is this person who's testing it? What are they doing with it? How are they testing it? What system, what kind of test are they using?
Just being protective. Yeah. And I think you kind of, nailed it earlier. Just being protective of yourself and what God gave you. And this belongs, we're both Catholics, and we're speaking to Catholics. Your DNA belongs to you, belongs to God. This is God given, and this is not something that anyone else has a right to.
Exactly.
And definitely shouldn't be making money off of, and just kind of respecting that and being aware of that.
And I think that's where that comes from. This kind of idea that, a lot of us are conservatives and we want to support big business and we want to support commerce and things like that. But at what expense.
Right.
You know, I mean,
we have to have respect. I mean, this goes into respect for human life, and
absolutely.
you know, it's just all part of that, and respecting your own life, and just what God gave you, and
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
giving God keeping for God what's God's, and
Right.
you know, within reason. Again, like you
Exactly.
said, you know, medicine's okay. It's
Right.
okay to
Yeah.
you know, want to heal yourself, and you know, get, if there's legitimate some reasons,
Yeah.
or you know,
or if you really want to know what 23andMe has to say,
right,
go ahead.
mm-hmm.
But just
knowing
know
where you
that,
came from is important. It's,
yeah,
you know,
and if that's really important to you, then go ahead. Just know
right,
that there will be more done,
yes,
than you probably know about. And if you're okay with that, then, you know, but just be aware.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
No, absolutely. I would never, questions, you know, ask them what their disposal policy is.
Yeah. I think we get, you know,
that.
this goes into something we've talked about before, and I know that in this previous episode that I just recorded with Dr. Prentice, I think we tend to feel a little, we tend to get a little shy, and when it comes to science and medicine and things that we don't necessarily understand, we're almost scared to ask questions.
Yeah.
Or, you know, we don't want to sound stupid, or we don't want to, you know, step on anybody's toes. Like, we figure that doctors and people, they know better, and, you know.
But often I don't think they do know. I bet you if you polled the people at the newborn, you know, the birth center at any hospital, the doctors and the nurses that work there, and the ones that collect those heel sticks, I bet you they don't know that those will go on file indefinitely.
And they may want to ask those questions themselves.
Exactly. So, you know, and again, that's a state-by-state basis, so you'd have to go ahead and look that up for your state, because some of them do destroy it in a year or two, but a good many of them keep them for decades or indefinitely. So, yeah. Well, and who knows what they do with them? I have no idea. Right.
All right. Well, thanks for bringing that to my attention. Actually, I wouldn't have. I think I saw this headline in passing, but then when you posted it on Facebook, I thought, you know, that's something we've never talked about. You know, we were all set to do another episode on transhumanism and, you know, whatever. But I think it's definitely something that's not discussed. It is timely. I mean, those Ancestry.com commercials are like
everywhere.
It's every other one. I mean, depending on whatever channel you're watching, I guess it would depend. But I mean, I see them repeatedly, so it's good. It's timely, and it's not discussed often enough, I don't think. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully, we'll talk to you again sooner than later.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Bye.